GreyWolf Towers again. So today's video is going to be part of a build series for a computer, but also an unboxing of the motherboard. So I have a couple of other items and we'll go over those in a moment. But for the motherboard, I wanted to get something that was a little bit nice. So I got an Asus Prime B560A, or sorry, B560M-A motherboard with the wireless built in. It is a 1200 socket for Intel, which means 10th and 11th gen. It is a 500 series board, which means it can run both 10 and 11th gen out of the box. So we won't have to update the BIOS for it to run 11th gen. But what good is a motherboard unboxing if we don't do the CPU as well? So I picked up a 10400F i5. So we can put that in and show you how to do the installation there. I normally get the 10100F, but I got the 10400F this time because it was on a really good deal. It's like 30 bucks more for it as opposed to the normal like 60 buck difference. So I was really like, ooh, nice, shiny. It'll make for a nicer build. So let's go ahead and take a peek and see what we get. Now the motherboard was roughly $85, $86 if I remember correctly, but let's say 90 just to be on the safe side plus tax. It is a Wi-Fi enabled motherboard, so let's take a look and see what we get for our money. It was refurbished or renewed, so we have the thank you for shopping renewed in here. I'm happy with your order, write us positive feedback. Thank you card from the computer headquarters, which is the company that sold it as refurbished. I did open it and take a look to make sure that it had everything that was going to be needed for the build. So we have a IO shield, however, it looks like the IO shield does not have the Wi-Fi punched out, so we'll have to see if we can get that punched out. You have the antennas here, 2 SATA cables, and a M.2 screw and nut. So some padding to keep it safe. The motherboard, some more padding, and that's it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the motherboard, which is what we're here for. Now I will tell you, when I was looking at it, I checked the socket just to make sure there was no damage, because I wanted to make sure that it was going to work for our build and that I'd be able to return it. I did find that there was one pin on the RGB header up here in the corner that was bent, and I bent that back already. But aside from that, everything else looks to be okay. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we get for our 85-90 bucks. So there are 2 M.2 sockets, one that's covered, one that's not for heatsink. There are 4 DIMM sockets for memory, so you've got plenty of expandability there. You've got your LGA 1200 socket for the CPU, which, like I said, I did go ahead and open and look at, and the pins do look like they're in good shape. I do not see any that are looking like they're out of place. You've got the 8-pin for CPU and the 24-pin for the motherboard. The 8-pin means that you can run i7s or even i9s on this board. I would not overclock. I don't believe there's any overclocking functionality in the B chipsets anyway, so I wouldn't try, but it has the capability of running even an i9 at stock speeds. There is heat sinks on the VRMs, so it should be nice enough to keep an i7 or even an i9 going. Like I said, no overclocking, so should be fine. You do have 4 SATA ports and 2 cables that come included. However, nowadays it's getting to be less and less common that we use SATA since we use the M.2s. You've got RGB headers up top, RGB headers down bottom. You've got your front panel headers here. It looks like there is a little bit of a bend to one of these pins, but nothing major. You've got your audio back here. You've got USB 2.0 here. You've got 2 USB 3.0s up here, which is nice. I haven't seen that on many boards. Typically you have one header for USB 3 and then maybe a 3.1 or 3.2, whatever it is, for the USB-Cs. But typically you don't get more than one USB 3 header. You've got 2 SATA two SATA ports facing the front of the board, two facing up, and they're in positions where the graphics card should not be an issue. For the rear, we have DisplayPort and two HDMI ports, so plenty of video options if you had a CPU that had video. However, this CPU does not have video. You've got 4 USB 2s and looks like a USB 3 or 3.1, and then a USB Type-C. So you've got plenty of USB ports for the budget side. You've got a PS2 spot. Personally, I'd prefer 1 or 2 more USBs as opposed to a PS2 because the technology is pretty much dead at this point. You've got your Wi-Fi spot here, which if you go underneath here and unscrew, you can then remove the cover to it, which will allow you access to a M.2 Wi-Fi adapter, which is able to be swapped out for a different one if you wanted to upgrade the Wi-Fi. So you can upgrade if you buy the right adapters. This one is an Intel 9462 chipset for the Wi-Fi, and then you've got your audio connections for the rear audio there, for audio in, audio out, and microphone. You do have 2 X16 slots, but if I remember correctly, only the metal one is, or the top one is X16. The bottom one, if I remember correctly, is X8. And then there is an X1 slot here as well, next to the M.2. So you do have all of the necessary items that you need. On the rear here by the audio, you have a fan for the chassis. Up here, you've got the CPU fan connection. You've got a optional up here for the CPU, which is usually used for things like AIOs. And it looks like that's about it for this motherboard. Oh, there's one more fan header down here for additional fans. So there's room for some upgrades and things down the road. You've got the 2 case fan headers and the CPU fan header up there, which allows for a variety of fan configurations, especially if you use an adapter for splitting fan headers. Overall, I think it's going to be a great motherboard, and I think it's going to work great for our build. Like I said, it's an i5-10400F, so no overclocking to the CPU, no overclocking from the motherboard, so they're a great pair. The 10400 is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU, so plenty of power for today's games. It is a bit older of a chip in 10th gen, now the 13th gen's out and 14th gen's around the corner, but I don't think that it's a bad deal when you get it for about 115 bucks. So something to think about if you're building a system is even a little bit older of a generation of CPU and motherboard can still make a great budget build. And it's new enough that it'll run all the new games that are coming out and powerful enough to run them, but at the same time, it's low enough cost that it's a budget system. So, that said and that out of the way, let's see if we can pop this in. There we go. So just to show you how easy it is to install a CPU. So the CPU is one of the easier things to install. However, you do want to be careful because when you install it, if you bend pins on the socket, you are pretty much out of a motherboard and have to get a new one unless you're really good and really careful at putting it together, pulling the pins and redoing them. But you just take it out of the container, flip open the CPU lever, so you just pull it out of the clamshell, pop open the lever, and it only inserts one way. There are little notches to show you how to do it and a little triangle that goes to the one corner. And then once you are done putting it into the socket, you just put the lever down, it pops off the cover piece, and then your CPU is installed. Now, we just have to install the CPU cooler. we're going to use the stock cooler. So we're just going to go ahead and take this here. Now, on the older stock coolers, they do have the blue label still, and it does have an up versus a down. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to install it with the label facing up as if this was up. So it's going to go this way here so that you can see the label on it the right way. That way it doesn't bother people as often or as much. Alright, and then we can test that it's in place by holding it by the cooler and there's no give on it. So the cooler is installed. Let's see if there's enough of the cable. Looks like just enough. There we go. And there's no hitting the fan, so wrapped around like it is, it's out of the way, it will not cause any problems, so that's good as well. Now, what good would a motherboard be to us for a build if we didn't install some of the basics as well? So let's go ahead and we will install the RAM. So the RAM that we bought for this case is the Power X from Silicon Power Turbine RGB package. Runs again about $40, $42, something like that. It is 3200 megahertz CL16 RAM, so it's nice and speedy, and it should take care of this build very nicely. Now this is, like I said, a budget build, so we are not looking to put 32 gigs into this build, but it can handle 32 as well as 64 gigs. Easy enough if you decide that you wanted to upgrade the RAM. So let's go ahead and install the RAM real quick. We just make sure that it's facing the direction that allows the slot to go into place. Push until we hear those clicks. And that is now done and out of the way. So we now have the RAM installed, the CPU installed, the motherboard is ready to go. The only thing we have left to do is a storage drive. We're going to go with an NVMe. However, I forgot to get a screwdriver to do the install, so I'm going to run and grab that real quick, but real fast. I'm just going to go ahead and prep the drive for us to use. This is a 1 terabyte NVMe, so good speed because it's an NVMe, and plenty of space as it's a terabyte as opposed to like a 500 gig or a 256 gig that comes in the average budget builds. So some nice there, fun there. So I'm going to go grab a screwdriver real quick and then we'll install the NVMe. Be right back. All right, back with our screwdriver. Again, just using the Minnow toolkit from iFixit. Now, again, I did not get this as a gift from them. I purchased this myself off of Amazon. It was roughly $15. I'll see if I remember and post down below a link for it if you're interested. Now, for this specific setup, we're going to use the heatsink version here. So let's go ahead and unscrew the heatsink. It is the topmost, which is usually the one that's run by PCIe lanes as opposed to SATA lanes. Makes it a little bit faster, a little bit more reliable. So for this, all you do is you just insert it at an angle of about 45 degrees, and then it sits right there with the screw. So when we're done peeling this, we get to set it down and it will go into place. Just had to get the screw into the hole the right way. My hands and eyes are not what they used to be, so I apologize for taking so long. But there we go, screwed down into place. And so now the M.2 is installed, the RAM is installed, the CPU is installed along with the CPU cooler, and we're ready to install it into the case. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I do hope this video helps you decide if this is the right motherboard for you, and two, how simple it is to set everything up on the motherboard and get it ready to be installed. As long as it helped you in some way, I would really appreciate it if you hit a like down below. If you found it entertaining, hit the like button down below. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button in this general area here, and that way you can keep up to date on our new videos and our community section. And as always, if you have any questions about myself, the channel, or the product, make sure you leave those down below in the comments section as well, or on Twitter @TowersGrey. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now.